Speak to Richard.Weitz, who is the director of the Centre for Political and Military Analysis at the Hudson Institute. Richard, good to have you with us. So, given that these three countries have particular influence on the ground in Syria, do you think their peace efforts could be more successful than previous attempts?
Well, it's true they have the most influence, I think, of probably any of the current players among foreign governments. But obtaining peace in Syria through negotiated settlement is still far away. I mean, even if these three come to an agreement and are able to secure the consent of some of the opposition groups, there's certainly the die-harders in ISIS and al-Nusra and others that will keep on fighting. What they could do if they prove to be extraordinarily successful is they could actually end the war through a military victory. I mean, they're the dominant military coalition at the moment. But even with the fall of Aleppo, that may still be far off.
All three of the parties were talking about respecting the territorial integrity of Syria. What does that mean? What does that mean for groups like the YPG and areas held by Shia militia groups?
Right. I mean, that is basically a code word for no independent Kurdish state, limited Kurdish autonomy. That's the same kind of formula that Turkey uses in its own territory that Iran applies with its Kurds and Iraq applies with its Kurds. So what it basically means is that these governments are going to cooperate to limit the ability of the Kurdish fighters, you mentioned the YPG, and there are a couple other groups, to have much autonomy. So far, of the three governments, Russia's had somewhat good relations with some of those groups, but certainly Turkey's relations to all of them are poor, and I think that they will certainly be a target of a future joint offensive of these parties.
And do these talks in Moscow mean that the three countries have come to some kind of compromise then on the future of Bashar al-Assad? Because Turkey certainly wanted him gone.
Right, that is the key difference between them. They agree on the importance of suppressing the Kurds. Turkey apparently has moved its position closer towards Russia on some issues such as terrorism and how to deal with some of the refugee issues. But the one difference that is persistent between them is Iran and has been very strongly in favor of Assad. Russia says it's open to anybody, but basically they're behind Assad. But the Turkish government has always been strongly against a continuation of the Assad regime, and that's been a point of criticism and confrontation with the United States and other countries as well. So it'll be interesting if Turkey does change that last point to bring it closer to the Russia-Iranian view.
And where does all leave the US, Richard? Has the US now been completely sidelined in any decisions or peace talks involving Syria?
Well, the US has not had much influence in Syria for a long time now. As you know, the U.S. has tried to work out some kind of negotiated settlement with Russia, and that's had on again, off again successes, but nothing that they can agree to is stuck on the ground. I don't think that there's going to be much of a change in the next few weeks with the Obama administration. Just a mystery is when Trump comes in, he has said he wants to cooperate more with Russia. He seems more open to working with Assad. He's more uncomfortable with some of the Syrian opposition groups. But he also is very strongly opposed to Iran. And as we've seen today and earlier, Iran has a strong role in Syria. So there's a contradiction in U.S. policy that will need to be resolved about working with Russia, accepting Assad, and opposing Iran.
Richard, great to speak with you. Thank you very much indeed for your analysis there. Richard.Weitz there in Washington, D.C.